After months and months and months of waiting, we finally gotten our hands on the next Battlefield game. There's a lot to go over in this, and most of the things I bring up are going to be negative, but there are some aspects of the gameplay I really enjoy. After playing this beta for around a day or so, it's abundantly clear why we saw nothing in regards to gameplay. This beta makes the Battlefield 5 alpha look like a finished product. Okay, maybe that's a bit much, but it's shocking how broken this beta is from hit registration, mouse input, performance, and the multitude of bugs. Despite its flaws, however, I did have a lot more fun playing this beta than I ever did playing Battlefield 5. The main gripe for me is how poorly this title runs. We're a month from release and I do not expect massive improvements to overall performance, if any whatsoever. The performance of this game is downright unacceptable. It runs poorly on pretty much everyone's system, even with people with top-of-the-line PCs only breaking 150 FPS in empty parts of the map, whereas in Battlefield 5 they're constantly hitting 200 to 250. I'd like to remind you that this game has been worked on by 3 different game studios for the past 3 or so years. If the performance roughly stays the same for release, I do not think I'm going to be playing this game for at least a good while. Coupled with the poor game performance, the mouse input in this game isn't even functioning properly. If you don't know, mouse input is apparently emulating an analog stick, which results in weird acceleration and sensitivity differences every time you move the mouse, and this has been the hardest game to ever aim in personally due to the bugged mouse inputs and playing the game at a choppy 70 to 80 FPS. If I had to describe the feeling of aiming in this game, it would be that I'm fighting against my mouse at random times. This is a major issue to how the game feels overall, and I fully expect it to be fixed by release. Moving on, hit registration in a Battlefield game hasn't been this bad since roughly Battlefield 4. I believe the 128 player servers are currently running at a tick rate of 45 Hz, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I've had multiple instances where I've mag dumped into people and have no feedback whatsoever. I do expect this to subside when the game fully releases though. Unsurprisingly, the map size is just as bad as everyone thought. Player density on Orbital is lower than the typical Battlefield game, despite having double the player count. Everyone on Orbital fights at either D or B, which leaves the rest of the map completely empty, with flags like A or F seeing only 1 or 2 people at most. Overall, the map design is horrendous and exacerbates the issues of Conquest even further, and the distance between the flags is enormous as well, with the run between D and C being roughly 700 meters. The only cover on the map is on the flags themselves, with vast, empty pieces of land connecting them. It's not fun trying to get across from D1 to D2, with your only options being a 50-meter trek across a flat concrete path, or through a tunnel that's likely going to be filled with explosive spam. Gunplay is very reminiscent of Call of Duty and the movement as well. Surprisingly, the weapons in Call of Duty have more varied recoil, with the weapons in 2042 having exclusively vertical recoil in practice. This could end up with weapons feeling roughly the same and not enough to differentiate them, but we'll have to see when the full game launches because the weapon pool in the beta is too small to really judge the weapon balance. The feel of shooting weapons in this game, however, is the best of any recent Battlefield game in my opinion, and I'll take that over having a gunplay system that's a bit harder to master but overall less fun to use. Its simplicity also allows new players to feel at home, and they don't really have to adjust when coming from other games. Movement feels great, with the only caveat being that the strafe speed is super slow, though it seems like that's pretty much a Battlefield staple at this point. The FOV increase when sliding is jarring, but the slide itself seems alright to me with no annoying third-person animations. Jump shotting finally feels like a viable option, since your weapon sights no longer sway far from screen center when jumping, like in prior Battlefields. The UI in this game is ugly to say the least, and isn't functional at all. The options menu is bugged, with the same keybinds appearing in different spots, and the values for FOV and sensitivity being completely wrong. The only way I was able to set my sensitivity and FOV precisely was to enter them via the in-game files rather than the options menu. You cannot customize the color of your crosshair precisely, nor can you change the color of your hit markers. There is no keybind to cycle through weapons in this beta, so it was extremely frustrating for me to get used to that, as I usually switch weapons with a mouse button, so I couldn't really reload cancel at all. User configs do not seem to work like in prior Battlefield games, so you have to enter the commands with the console individually, which is unacceptable. Lastly, the animations and downtime in this game feels a bit too slow. Grenades are extremely overpowered, detonating instantly with no indicator, and the only downside to them being that you have to switch to them and then throw them, similar to a game like Apex Legends. The actual throwing animation is fast though. Healing with the Surret pistol is super slow, especially with the designated self-heal by shooting into your arm, and I've run into many instances where I take out the Surret pistol only to have it not shoot due to some weird minor delay. Using the self-heal versus just shooting the ground is worth it in my opinion, given its longer animation, because the rate at which you heal by just shooting the ground is far slower than just shooting into your arm. And that's going to wrap up my thoughts on this beta. I really enjoy the infantry combat in this game, but it's hard to get around to that when I have to traverse such a large map, not to mention the poor performance making it extremely difficult to aim. I'll probably have a video up in the next day or so with a clip dump of the rest of my beta gameplay, so until then, it's been BloodHound, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.
What is that? What is that word? ¿Qué es kung? ¿Qué es kung? Puta mama, puta zorra. I hope you put that on the video.